perfect ecosystem, which is in fact just how the most likely magical ecosystem would look like, plus some great concepts of known fantasy media. But before we can understand a magical ecosystem, we need to understand what makes real ones work. Ecology is more than just about animals eating each other. It's about energy moving through a system. The sun gives energy to plants, plants feed animals, and when everything dies, decomposers break it all back down to feed the cycle again. Energy is never created or destroyed, it just changes a form. And at every step, a lot of that energy is lost as heat or waste, a shocking 90% of it. So if magic existed, it would follow the same rule. Magic would be a type of energy, something that moves through the world in cycles. It would have producers, consumers, and decomposers, just like any ecosystem on Earth. Later in the video, we'll go a bit more into the details of an ecosystem, but first let me have a go at basic biology. The producers in a
So far, he's going kind of exactly where I was going with the plants. In the world that I'm trying to create for my game, magic leaks into the world through the spirit wilds. It's like a buildup of energy, typically due to like really powerful spirits or something to that effect, just hunkering down in the space. And if enough of them are in an area, then pretty much it kind of swells. It creates a whale that eventually pushes into the material realm, and then just kind of, it basically forms like a bubble and it pops like a pimple and just kind of runs off naturally. And areas where it absorbs more consistently, typically again forests, certain mountains that have a certain material, random MacGuffin material, it will gather in, or it will crystallize in, or it'll create slimes, basically. I'm not even going to get into the whole thing about slimes, but yeah, it does pretty much like this. And pretty much from there, mages would use plants, or animals would consume plants and kind of mutate from there, especially with what's going on in the world of my game, because the world's kind of in a sense of collapse. It's like similar-ish to Destiny and Lancer and Fallout, basically. The world got technically advanced. Some shit happened with the cosmic being. Things went south, and basically things either got mutated by magic, or they just kind of chilled out type situation. Humans hunkered down in bunkers or got mutated or something along those lines. But yeah, the world pretty much went magic. It's not full magic. It can be if you do certain things, but pretty much it's seeming like he's about to go where I'm expecting it to go, which is plants absorb the magic, rocks absorb the magic, magic deposits or something to that effect. It turns into, it's basically like magic is kind of constantly going through a cycle. Either the animals eat it, process it, and either use magic that they've consumed or literally shit it out and it gets into the plants and fungus, or certain ores absorb it. It causes some kind of weird chemical reaction, turns into liquid, spreads throughout into the water system or something to that effect. And it basically just creates this natural ecosystem until it eventually fizzles out. Because the only reason, again, it's in the material plane is because it's a heavy, dense amount of motes of magic pretty much in the area. So high energy basically vibrates into, collects, vibrates, gets stronger, and then it kind of bursts into the material plane. And they'll either settle and store in certain materials, or it'll just kind of reach a low vibration and then go back into the spirit realm, get supercharged again, and come right back.
Magical magical ecosystem would be things that generate or store magical energy. Maybe it's certain plants that absorb energy from the sun and store it as mana, or geological formations that collect it deep underground. You can think of these like mana roots or latries, the magical equivalent of coral reefs or rainforests, dense centers of life that everything else depends on. Then you'd have consumers. These are the organisms, or even people, that use that stored energy. Magical creatures might absorb ambient mana from the air, or feed on mana-rich plants. Mages, in this context, would just be one kind of consumer. Humans who learned how to metabolize magical energy more efficiently. And finally, arguably the most important part, decompose.
Didn't think about mages as being consumers. But yeah, basically people would be either storing it and whatnot like that. And my version of mages technically would be storing it literally, because they create sigils and store magic there, or people who have been mutated or sorcerers, so they have natural magic. And then there's those people who create pacts with magic creatures or actual spirits. So yeah.
Users. When living things die, their mana doesn't just vanish. Something has to recycle it. Maybe fungi break down decayed magical matter, or creatures like mana worms absorb unstable energy before it causes damage. Without these decomposers, magic would pile up like pollution until the entire ecosystem breaks down. It's the same principle that keeps our world running. Balance. Too much energy in one place.
I didn't think about that. Like somehow, some way to just basically collect a bunch of magic in one place and actually have it. Like what would happen if like a spirit was pushing in too much high energy stuff? Motes, basically. Motes is basically the name of the particle for the magic. You could just call it arcana or something like that, or mana. But motes is the name of the particle that you'll be gathering and using when you're doing magic. I'm guessing it would probably just turn to regular radiation though. And it would mutate things more heavily. Because there is a mechanic in the game where magic does mutate people and they turn into monster-esque or something to that effect. It kind of follows the whole Lord of Mysteries thing. Basically, using magic puts the chance of you getting corrupted. So, yeah. But yeah, there's no decomposers because technically once it sits there and... No, there is, I guess. Because if it gets into stone and it just stays as a stone, it could collect. But that would cause mutations because the way... Basically speaking, too much magic gathers in this place, and when it starts getting all chaotic, it creates the slimes, and the slimes kind of go about and eat magic. They are, I guess, the decomposers. At least my version of decomposers. But they also kind of eat reality in a sense because they are made of reality. It's glitches in reality that make my version of slimes. They're basically like eldritch things. I fuse mimics and slimes to be all the same thing. They literally just coat. That was the thing I was actually going to wind up not talking about. But yeah, they coat stuff and they basically fuse it with magic and use their magic and their own little eldritchness to basically make mimics. If they consume enough people, they basically turn into doppelgangers, all that stuff like that. But they are, I guess, like the decomposers, technically. I guess I could come up with like spell plagues and other random things too. Just for, hey, there's too much magic gathered in one area. I'm surprised I kind of didn't think about that at all. That kind of feels dumb with me. Yeah. So what else could it be? Magic, spell plagues, animals acting crazier, I guess mutations or heavier mutations, basically creating like an anime whenever they make up the random BS reason that monsters start breaking out of the dungeon. So I guess that could be it. Basically like animals getting supercharged and the more sentient ones purposely going out, I guess, to attack if they are hostile. And the ones who are a little bit more sentient and conscious would probably just leave because it's harmful to them as well, potentially, because it would probably send them into a frenzy. So they'll either retreat back into the spirit wilds or they'll just retreat the area at large. And the more wild ones will just kind of scatter, in which case, again, spirit wilds, or they'll run out into actual nature, making it more apparent that, oh, magic shit's here. And then, yeah, I guess like weird spell plagues, like it'll affect the weather in some kind of weird way, or it'll affect nature in a weird way. Plants can mutate, animals mutating, weird sicknesses or strange, basically like I guess it would bring more spirits also, but then also maybe those spirits mixing into or causing, because spirits are already present kind of in a little bit of everything, it would affect the spirits that are in the items, like water. You drink the water causes weird effects. You eat the plants cause weird effects. Okay, cool. So yeah, in which case there'll be the slimes eating up magic, or at least eating it up and releasing it back into the atmosphere to basically be low frequency and fall back into the spirit wilds. Animals eating certain materials and pooping it back out and it getting released that way. Fungus kind of breaking that down some more and releasing spores, creating probably a new kind of fungus in exchange. People definitely needing to probably either collect the stones or weather phenomenon that basically, matter of fact, spell plagues, stuff like that, creating crazier storms. Maybe the water breaking down into the mountain or something like that, or getting there eventually. It's like almost the world itself is trying to basically deal with the excess energy. So it would probably cause crazier storms. And it's basically just trying to get the water down there to break down the minerals of the collected stuff. So, okay. In a sense, the world itself is a decomposer. That's another thing. And also just a sign that, hey, storms are crazy here for a reason. You should probably check it out, despite the fact that it is crazy. Okay, dope.
Creates chaos, but too little leads to collapse. So the first rule of magical ecology is simple. Energy must always move and nothing gets a free ride. Once we accept that magic would behave like energy, a bunch of very fascinating questions open up. Like, where does used magic go after it's cast? It wouldn't just vanish, it would probably degrade, like heat fading after a fire. The leftover residue might linger in the soil or air as weak, unstable energy. Over time, it could crystallize into mana stones or get absorbed back into the environment. That's why old battlefields could still hum with residual power centuries later. They're magical dead zones that haven't fully decomposed yet. But what happens when the system runs out of magic? You'd get something like an ecological collapse. Creatures and plants that depend on ambient mana would die off first. Magical species might shrink or lose their powers entirely. While hardier,
Because, yeah, magic is everywhere, or at least magical creatures are still everywhere, which they also produce some level of magical energy, some form of motes and particles. So, At least that's kind of how I have it set up. Spirits typically exist where there is life or where there was life. So, yeah. I don't have anything like dead zones particularly that I can think of. Just more so of if it's a lack of magic, spirits probably would be weaker, but I don't think it really does much. I guess like nature would also probably suffer a little bit, but it doesn't create sickly or death. At least that's not how my system was set up. For the most part, the spirit wilds, when it leaks into the material plane, just makes the material plane more so. Never really thought about adding negative effects of spiritual energy, other than, again, it would just be weaker spirits. Because there'll be weaker spirits or less to no spirits in the spirit plane. Pretty much the way it works is it's the astral, the spirit wilds, the ethereal plane kind of a little bit below it, but still stacked on top of each other. And then below that is the material plane. So your astral flag or thoughts and consciousness leaking out from your ethereal ghost that is connected to your actual body, following Bleach rules pretty much. It's like, yeah, there's basically a cord constantly tied to a person. And it basically comes from you out into the ethereal plane, into the spirit wild, well, really into the ethereal and the astral. And kind of your thoughts and whatnot do kind of bleed into the astral, but it's mostly like really weak stuff, very basic particles, mostly when you're dreaming, but not too much of anything really gets affected until you, and then the rest of your basic spiritual essence leaves your body, goes up to the astral, and you're either kind of stuck between the material or you're all the way in the spiritual, or just somewhere in that, ethereal. But pretty much the ethereal is kind of the in-between space, while astral is kind of everything and everywhere at all times, until the spiritual plane and all the other planes basically bleed into the abyss and the far shore type situation. And that stuff basically goes to limbo and then out into the abyssal sea, which is either like a really dark, scary ocean, or out into basic space, kind of, sort of, which some spirits and deities do claim worlds out there and throw worlds up out there and create overthrones and all that stuff like that, similar-ish to Destiny. They basically like create worlds where their worshippers and whatnot do go when they pass. And it's basically like a never-ending battery for them. Their worshippers get to live in the afterlife and don't necessarily have anywhere specifically to go. They do, but yeah. I'm not gonna make this into a thing about gods and stuff, I guess. Not right now, anyways. I still have so much more in this video, technically. We'll probably just end it here. I'll link this dude. I'm gonna continue watching. Maybe I'll get some more inspiration or something. But I don't see myself changing too much, and I don't think I'm gonna really do too much with the decay thing. Okay, bye. Beep.